Hi, and welcome to another in a series of streaming sessions on the Northern Road Link project. Today we're going to talk about, continue our conversation on the environmental assessment terms of reference. And we're going to talk specifically today about the consultation and engagement plan and what it includes. Joining me today are my co-hosts, Mr. Michael Fox and Mr. Qasim Sadiq, who is to my right. And both are co-leads for the Northern Road Link project. Again, the purpose of these streaming sessions is to help community members better understand the process. We're just at the beginning of this process. So we want to take you through this process and explain it. And in doing so, we want to try to encourage you to participate in the process as much as possible. We are trying to hear from you as much as possible in this journey we call the Northern Road Link environmental assessment. So what I think I'll do to start things off is do a little recap on, as we have in previous weeks, on just what an environmental assessment is, and then the Ontario process in general. So let's just talk a bit about environmental assessment. The environmental assessment looks at potential project effects, and it assesses or analyzes those effects. And it also identifies what you call mitigation measures, which are ways by which to eliminate or reduce the impact, project impacts, whatever they might be. There's a lot of data collection, a lot of field work associated with this work. There's many studies involved in an environmental assessment, and we'll be collecting a lot of data, both from the field, Indigenous knowledge data, which comes from the field to some extent, but mainly from community members. And we'll be getting, all along the way at many different points, it's almost continuous, we'll be getting input from you, community members, members of the general public, and other stakeholders, as well as government agencies. So that's a basic description of environmental assessment. Now the Ontario EA process, just to define it and describe it simply, there are two phases to the Ontario EA process. There's the terms of reference phase, which is sort of the planning phase for the environmental assessment, where the work plan is developed. And then there is the environmental assessment doing phase, the actual doing the environmental assessment work. So in terms of the environmental assessment terms of reference, what are these? They are, the environmental assessment terms of reference are the work plan for the project. What we're going to do as part of the environmental assessment. It describes what we're going to do to understand any impacts that the project might have on the environment. Now, when we use the term environment, most people immediately think natural environment, trees, water, wildlife, etc. But it refers to more than that. It's not just the natural environment, it's the cultural environment, it's the social environment, it's the economic environment. It is a very, very big group of studies. It is a very comprehensive assessment of the impact of a project, and it occurs over a number of years, as you will find out in the streaming sessions and radio shows to come. Now, the one thing I want to emphasize is that, as I mentioned, all along the way we are looking for input from you. Your comments are extremely important because they help shape and determine what will be done during the EA, and sometimes how it will be done as well. So, do we know everything about environmental effects of the project at this point? No, we don't. That's why we need to talk to you as community members. You know the land, you have lived on the land. You and your previous generations have lived on the land for thousands of years and have accumulated a huge amount of knowledge about the land. You have a connection with the land in a physical way, in a spiritual way, and that is information that is extremely helpful for us to understand in putting together the environmental assessment. So, with that, I will now pass you over to Qasim, who will talk about the ToR Consultation Plan and what it is. Qasim, over to you.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for that background and overview of the process. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about the ToR Consultation Plan. So first things first, what is a ToR Consultation Plan? So it basically describes the consultation and engagement activities proposed for the Northern Road Link project. For the ToR phase itself, there's going to be a separate consultation plan for the EA phase. So this one is only focused on the terms of reference phase for the Ontario process. It is considered a first phase or step in the development of a coordinated approach to consultation. So when we say coordinated, we talk about the provincial and the federal process. That as the proponent, as the project team for the Northern Road Link, we try to provide information on and consult on both the federal and the provincial process. So that's the coordinated part. But the plan itself is, the consultation plan itself is, we draft it, but it's refined by input received from government agencies, participating Indigenous communities and other stakeholders. So we highly encourage input on this plan, because it really is the first step in setting out consultation and engagement. So your input, once again, really matters, and it really helps make things more refined. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the components of the ToR consultation plan as well. At a high level, there are three main components of the ToR consultation plan. The first one is a description of proposed approach to consultation and engagement. The approach describes the purpose and principles used for consultation. These principles guide us in our consultation effort, essentially. And they really sort of become our North Star in terms of how we operate and what do we try and achieve throughout the project. So the ToR identifies the consultation requirements. The consultation plan identifies all the consultation requirements associated with the different regulatory processes involved. The second thing is identification of stakeholders and Indigenous communities. So we get a list initially from the provincial regulator, which in this case is MECT, an initial list at this stage of Indigenous communities and stakeholders that we should be consulting with. And that is refined as the process continues. So in the ToR consultation plan, you will see a list of stakeholders in Indigenous communities. And then lastly, we also describe our overall consultation process. What type of consultation tools would we use, the type of schedule we expect to follow, how we track issues as they emerge. So based on this consultation plan, communities and stakeholders will be consulted on the draft ToR. The input received on the draft ToR will help us get to a final ToR, which will reflect all the comments received from communities and other stakeholders. So let's talk a little bit about the principles, the guiding principles in the ToR consultation plan as well, Don. I think this is probably one of the most important parts of the consultation plan, at least for us. As I said, I think the term that I used is that it becomes our North Star throughout the process. So the first slide that you see there relates to guiding principles of the ToR consultation plan. And these are sort of overall principles that guide us. So the 5 principles are starting with meaningfulness, to provide meaningful opportunities for early involvement of Indigenous communities, public and other stakeholders and government agencies. I think this live streaming is a really good example of that. I think it's both innovative and during these times, difficult times of COVID, it still provides an opportunity to get information out so that communities can see this live, or those who are not able to see it live, go back and sort of watch it on our website, because the recording of this will be available. And make this meaningful. You see it at your own pace, at your own time, but provide input and comments. So the website has a form. Again, it's northernroadlink.ca, which provides ability to sort of get in touch with us. So that's the first part, which is meaningfulness. The second one is transparency, opportunity to participate through multiple channels to share information. Again, this is an example, but there are going to be other multiple sources and avenues of getting involved in the process. The third, inclusiveness and accessibility, which basically says that it provides different participation opportunities to diverse groups. We, as the proponent, appreciate that this is in a remote part of Ontario. We want to work with many different remote Indigenous communities and stakeholders throughout the process. So as such, we wanna include everyone. We want to be as accessible as possible. We think we've thought of all different tools and means to do that, from remote, online, call-ins, 1-800 numbers, Indigenous only open houses, which for now will be sort of online and remote. But then individual opportunities to come into communities. If communities like, once public health guidelines change, meeting with organizations, meeting with communities in different settings as well, off reserve, in Thunder Bay or any other city that communities prefer. So that's a part of that, is accessibility, that we want to make our team and our information as accessible as possible. So the fourth principle is flexibility. I think it goes hand in hand with accessibility. We're flexible in our approach, which means that we'll be responsive to issues and concerns brought forward. We have an idea around what the project is, what it should look like, but nothing is set in stone, and that's the flexible part. It'll continue to change and evolve based on information, data, and most importantly, Indigenous knowledge received from communities. Lastly, the last principle is collaboration. Working closely with Indigenous communities, with stakeholders to maximize cooperation, and I think that's inherent in everything that we try to achieve with this, and it's the nature of the proponency as well. It's the nature of the project proponent, with 2 Indigenous communities leading the process, collaborating on a shared vision, and that level of collaboration is, I think, built into our DNA as a team. So let's talk a little bit about the elders' guiding principles for the ToR consultation plan as well. Now, this is a really important one for our project, just because of, again, the nature of the proponent. Between the 2 communities, Martin Falls and Webekwe First Nation, both are Indigenous communities, and this project is unique as a result. This is probably one of the very few projects led by Indigenous communities, and certainly in Ontario, one of the very few, given its size and scale, and the fact that it's led by 2 Indigenous communities for their own shared prosperity. So guidance has been provided to the project team by elders from the 2 communities, and both of their guidances had a lot of similarities. So we've sort of amalgamated that together in our guiding principles here, and they start with mutual recognition of inherent rights. Just recognizing that the communities, Indigenous communities, we're consulting with, engaging with, have Indigenous rights. Mutual recognition of ancestral knowledge. As Don said, many generations have lived on the land, and that knowledge goes from one generation to another. So recognizing and respecting that ancestral knowledge, mutual recognition of traditional knowledge and practices, the way things are done in this part of Ontario, recognition of clan, families, and relationships. It goes from one community to another, and certainly between Martin Falls and Webekwe, these relationships run deep. Mutual recognition of sustainable livelihood. and mutual recognition of traditional protocols. So it's a way of looking at the world which is very different. We see it from the perspective of two indigenous communities primarily, and we do it today, and we will continue to do that in the future. I think yes, we have to meet certain federal and provincial guidelines around who we consult, but we have a sense of the level of interest, of the level of impact based on these guiding principles from Martin Falls and from Webber. And I think in addition to meeting our requirements for our federal requirements and our provincial requirements, we'll certainly be looking at these guiding principles to guide us throughout the project. So with that, Michael, can I invite you to talk a little bit about participants and stakeholders through this process?
Thanks, Qasim. Yeah, so when it comes to what you just said around the principles, and as the guiding star, the North Star, I guess, as you were saying, the reason that's so important is because of the wide range and diverse range of participants and stakeholders on this project. So our consultation plan aims to identify each Indigenous group's level of interest. So how interested are they in community, are they interested in the project, and engagement throughout the project, as well as consideration of the potential impact of the community. So, but it's not just the Indigenous communities, it's actually a number of other stakeholders that are involved in that. So part are Indigenous communities proper, so I would say First Nations and Métis groups, right? Then you got individual Indigenous members that want to have a say, and they have a right to say, to have input in the project, as well as individual public interests. So it's not just the Indigenous communities, it's Indigenous people in general, like whether they're in that specific community or in a urban setting. Maybe they have families, along the route and stuff. So when we say Indigenous communities, we largely focus a lot of times on First Nations and Métis groups, but it could be Indigenous communities within towns and municipalities across Northern Ontario. Other groups that there are probably that's going to likely be on our list is tribal councils. They do provide technical services to communities and advice and support, as well as provincial territorial organizations like Anishinaabe Nation and the Métis Nation of Ontario. So each of these Indigenous organizations will have different levels of interest on this project, as well as we have the public and stakeholders. And when we say that, it's a range. You can have individuals participating, taking interest, and we have those. We invite you to join our e-newsletter, because that's how we sort of gauge the range of stakeholders or the folks signing up for the e-newsletters. And you have business interests, industry association interests, for different reasons. So you may have junior exploration companies very interested in this project. If a road does go through, then the cost of drilling and exploring is greatly reduced versus flying in helicopters hauling those drill rigs. You may have forestry companies interested, maybe north of the undertaking, as they call it, thinking a road may help facilitate further harvesting. You actually may have on the other side of the spectrum, ecotourism or recreationalists. I know there's organized canoe trips, that are in sort of highway accessible communities, and they set up and they actually paddle all the way to the Hudson Bay, to the great community of Winnis First Nations, and the people there in Pewanik will tell you, every summer, you know, there's a group of people that's finished canoeing all the way up there.
That's a long way, Mike.
Very long way. And but it's done every year, so they would have an interest in this, right? Among other groups. So you could have tourist operators. There may be remote fly-in fishing operations, and you know, having a road nearby may facilitate or maybe frustrate their interests, right? In terms of providing something inaccessible to other people, kind of thing. So public and stakeholders, they may include municipalities. So most likely Thunder Bay, you know, the main hubs, you know, Gerald, Greenstone area, Sioux Lookout, and other ones like Pickle Lake, and, you know, like sort of communities of interest. And then they have what they have actually have a formal group called Government Review Team. So it's the sister ministries of the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. I think that's what they're called. Yeah, and then the change. Okay, I know there was a cabinet shuffle, and I wasn't sure if they changed their names or not.
I don't think they've changed.
No, okay, that's good. I think the minister changed.
Minister changed, yes,
okay.
that's
so,
right. That's right.
Yeah, so there's an official group within the Ontario government that reviews this as well and participate on it technically as well, like from their subject matter experts. So that's the range of participants and shareholders, and I just give you a kind of a flavor of that. Then you have, you know, sort of, you know, the engagement consultation approach or their overview. So, you know, the projects these days, like major undertakings in Ontario, tries to coordinate with the federal government on the consultation process, any EA process. That includes the consultation process. So, if and when this is submitted to the federal government, you know, you'll have a federal party now at the table helping with well, actually, they'll probably doing their own consultation, but there's some level of coordination around that. So some of the engagement tools and techniques, you know, can range as, you know, from one-way to two-way communications, from notification letters like we did with the notice of commencement with the Northern Road Link ToR process. That was in May 2021, and then we're aiming for the fall of 2021 to have a draft of terms of reference for the public to review and comment. During that process, you know, we're doing a range of communication channels, from, you know, the old school mail, you know, sending you letters, direct mail, emails. You'll see notices in newspapers, through ads, even, you know, what do you call those, button ads on websites of, you know, the newspapers, newsletters, videos, live streaming sessions like this. We're planning for Indigenous open houses, probably virtually initially, and maybe, you know, at some point actual face-to-face one. Chief and council meetings, when they're ready to meet, as public and stakeholder open houses, independent from the Indigenous one, meeting with off-reserve members, community members, engagement with the Métis groups, as well as engagement with tribal councils and project website interactions and social media following. So that's the range of tools and techniques and methods where we're gonna engage on this ToR process. Remember, this is just a ToR process, so we're open. We're totally open for any suggestions to improve this process, the engagement level with both the Indigenous communities and other general stakeholders. One of the last part I think I wanted to focus on is the record consultation. So the Northern Road Link team will maintain a database log to track all consultation engagement activities. Record type, you know, it records different types of correspondence received, to whom it is addressed, when it was received, the summary of incoming, outgoing correspondence, by whom and when comments were addressed, response content, how comments and responses were incorporated into the ToR process. So we look for feedback, and we want to capture that feedback. And it's probably, I think you called it the sort of the bookkeeping aspect of this process. And part of the record and consultation is there's a whole team behind it. And their job is to ensure that they capture as accurately as possible the comments, the feedbacks, the inquiries, as well as track all those inputs and comments and concerns, questions, information requests, follow-up actions, and the range of impacts that are being considered by the stakeholders and Indigenous communities, and making sure we close that all off, you know. And so that's the last part of the most important part, but one of which is public as well, so people can actually read the record consultation. If we captured it inaccurately, then by all means, please correct us, and we'll correct the record. So I think that's it for now. Is it? Or we do have? Oh yeah, sorry. Last thing. Sorry, my numbering's all screwed up here. Because it's mostly Indigenous communities, language is important, the Indigenous language. So we're going to make our attempts to get the terms of reference summary made available in Ojibwe, Ojibwe, and Cree for the Indigenous communities. So, and with the Indigenous Knowledge Program, the consultation program will support that as well. So it's all kind of, there's an interplay, but it's all integrated at the end.
Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Qasim, for contributing today. That was an interesting topic, lots to cover, short period of time to cover it in, but I think we sufficiently covered that, I think, and we'll dive more deeply into these topics as time goes on, and we'll be back soon. We're going to take a break for a few weeks and come back very soon to talk about another series of topics, and we'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. We welcome you to visit our website at northernroadlink.ca. We've got a lot of information available there. We try to keep it up to date as much as possible. There's always new content going up there. We have streaming sessions that we post as well too. So there's a lot of information there. So we encourage you to keep visiting that website and look for us on social media as well. And we will talk to you again soon in a few weeks. So take care and don't hesitate to contact us at any time. Thanks for joining us. Miigwech.
Rich.
Thank you.